going back to like entrepreneurship in general, how'd you make your first dollar online?
Yeah, so my stories, I think it's slightly different than a lot of people. Growing up, grew up in a Christian home, raised with some pretty important values, and one of the important things for me always, and one of my biggest passions growing up was like helping people, especially working in third world countries. So I would travel a lot. I'm from California, so grew up in California. I would travel a lot to Mexico, help out, build houses, different things like that. And I always grew up with those kind of values and that kind of passion. And so the biggest thing for me was like, man, this is what I want to do. Like I want to learn Spanish, and I want to work in nonprofits, and I want to help people, and I want to do this and that. And that's what I feel like that was kind of my unique approach to life that was different from most people, because most people are just like, I want to graduate high school, and then I want to go to college somewhere, and then I want to get a job or whatever. I was like, I want to move to South America. So when I was 17, I moved to South America.
Oh, wow.
Moved to Argentina, lived there for about 5 years. And kind of my goal obviously was to learn Spanish. That's actually where I met Luke when he was like 15 years old. I was 17.
Luke Belmar?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Because he's from there. So I actually moved to this small little town, and he happened to live in the same small little town. Like literally small. When I say small town, like everyone knows each other. Small
That's
town.
cool.
So it's like a huge coincidence out of nowhere. And that was my big goal in life, was to build my own nonprofit. Well, actually, it wasn't to build it then. It was to be in a nonprofit that I could just work and volunteer in. Long story short, there was just kind of a lot of different frustrations of as an entrepreneur, I don't like to be told what to do. I like to work my own hours. I like to do things how I want to do things. And working for nonprofits is very similar to working for a business, right? Like you have a boss, he tells you what to do, when to do it, how you do it. And it's just like, I'm like, man, this isn't the best way to help people. Like this isn't the best way to have an impact. And I was just like, this isn't right. So then I would move to a different nonprofit, and then the same situation. And then one of the things with nonprofits as well is that the donor motivates and manages a lot of what goes on. I have a huge passion for South America. Like that's where one of my passion lies. And there's this one nonprofit that I worked for about 3 months only, and that's all it lasted, because I went to the director of South America and I was like, hey, this is what my vision is. This is what I want to do. And he's like, wow, that's fantastic. He's like, you should find somewhere else to go. And I was like, what? I was
Wait
like,
a second.
didn't you like my idea? Isn't this your job, like to do it? He's like, yeah, but people don't donate to South America here. And I was just sitting there. I was like, okay. He's like, so maybe you should do your own thing or find someone else. And I was just sitting there like, I was young still, and I was like scratching my head. I was like, well, this isn't what you normally get told when you're hired to come do this. So then that's where I went back to South America, moved to Peru. I still had no money, still was making no money. Was living based off of just like some things that I earned here and there on the internet doing online jobs. And I was like, okay, well, what am I going to do? Went to work at a school for a while because I'm really passionate about children education. So I worked at a school for a while just to see how to do it. And I was like, okay, well, maybe this is it. Maybe I'll just work at a school in South America somewhere. And then I was like, nah, waking up at 6 a.m. and coming to a school and then teaching kids I was like, no, this isn't it either. So long story short, I have a lot of frustration and just like hitting a bunch of walls where I was like, I know what I want to do. I know what it looks like. But there's nowhere that I'm able to do it. I just entered this like mode of like trying to build my own business. So I actually built this business and this is where I guess I made my first online dollar, even though it was kind of in person. I built a delivery system for barbers. And so it was during the time of like the Venezuelan crisis. And so a lot of Venezuelans were coming to Peru, and I wanted to be able to help them out, give them a job. So I built this. Venezuelans are very good barbers. So I built this delivery barber system where it's like Uber, but you'd order your barber to your house. I didn't know what I was doing, obviously, because it was the first business, so it absolutely crashed and burned. And then during that time of just like complete frustration, I entered this hard time of like depression, which I feel like a lot of maybe not a lot, but quite a few people that I've talked to in the entrepreneur game like kind of enter of like, I don't know what to do now. Nothing's working. Everything that I tried to do just fails. And for me, it was never a depression of like I was suicidal. It was always like I have no motivation to do anything. I just don't want to get out of bed. I'll just sit here and binge Netflix for whatever. but I also know that I'm not like going to kill myself because I know that I have like a bigger calling. I know that I want to impact people. I know that I want to help people. And I know that I have something to offer to the world. And one of the biggest philosophies that I've learned is in the past few years is that it's very, very selfish not to be your best self and to work in the best way possible, because not in like some egotistical, like, oh, I'm a huge, great person or whatever, but like with the work that you can do and the talents that you have been given, you can impact a lot of people.
Yeah.
Right. And so it is very, very selfish not to work to your fullest capacity. So that was my thought then. I was like, okay, I'm not like suicidal, so I'm going to get out of this eventually, but I just had no idea what to do. So then I actually made a mistake, and I was like, I'm going to go back to something safe. I'll just go back to the nonprofit that I was working for in Argentina. I know all the people there. I was there for 5 years, whatever. COVID hit. Literally moved all of my stuff, including my dog, to Argentina. I went back to Peru to sell my apartment to get the last few things. The day that my flight was literally flying out was the day every single airport in the world was closed. Oof. The same exact day. And had already sold my apartment, so I was stuck with a bunch of friends in this 2-bedroom apartment. There was like 6 of us all that got stuck there in a 2-bedroom apartment. And I was like, okay, well, this has to be a sign. Like there's not a bigger sign on the planet. And so I was like, okay, well, maybe the approach that I should be doing is like freelancing online, right? Like I was following Luke, obviously, because we were good friends, and I was like, well, he's doing something online. Maybe I'll just find something that I could do online. And then just, I guess, randomly, like throughout my research, I just like found SEO, and I was like, okay, well, maybe SEO is the thing that I go for. And then just throughout COVID, I was just able to study, wasted a lot of time, don't get me wrong, because I had no idea what I was doing, like wasting time on building a website when really you just need a client, you don't need a website, like making sure my logo is perfect, making like all the stupid stuff that you shouldn't worry about at the beginning of a business. But long story short, I went into freelancing, and I was like, okay, I'll just freelance on like Upwork and Fiverr and stuff and make some money on here. And then once the borders open back up again and everything opens, then I'll go to this nonprofit and I'll be able to make my own money instead of having to rely on donors, and I can do whatever I want to. And it all sounded perfect and pretty and everything. But then one of the things that I realized immediately, well, one, I hated servicing clients. Absolutely hated it. I hated managing all of it. I hated everything operations. I hated, and I was like, well, this isn't going to work, because that's all that a freelancer does, right? Like they basically do both jobs. And then the second thing that I realized is that my time leverage was like super, super low. And Luke actually helped me realize that, is that like, hey bro, if you're going to work half the day and then do stuff half the day, like you're limited to the amount that you can do. And not only that, but you're limited to the amount of money that you have to be actually able to do that. So your reach is going to be limited based on how much you're making. And so he's like, why wouldn't you just leverage other people instead? So then you can go and multiply what you're able to do. And that's kind of when it hit. And that's when, and I actually, this was happening, we were talking about this at his very first mastermind in Mexico. A lot of people don't know, but his first mastermind was in Mexico like 2.5 years ago. That's where I met all the guys last night at dinner. Luke, Don, he actually came later, Anthony.
That's sweet.
But we've known each other for a long time. But there was just 11 of us at the first masterminds. So we were all like super close quarters. Like they were our boys. Like we were there for a week. And he was just like, he's like, you're wasting your time. And I was kind of anti-capitalist then. I was like, money's stupid. Like there's no point. Like we should just help people. It was just like this weird mindset of like, I only want to help people and that's it. Like money's dumb. It has no use. Like it just corrupts you, whatever.
Do you think a lot of that came from like the growing up Christian?
No, a lot of it came from just my mentality of living in a third world country and seeing how little people have and how much they still are able to enjoy life.
Yeah.
Right? Like if you've ever lived in a third world country, like people have the greatest and they're the happiest and they live in little shacks in the middle of nowhere. And you're like, how are they happy? They don't have anything. And then you realize that that's not what it's all about. And then when you think about like even like helping people and working in whatever it is, building wells, building houses, children education programs, you're just like, wow, this is actually fulfilling and this is actually happy. So I had in my mind, I was like, well, people that have nothing, they're happier than me. And when you're actually doing this helping for people that don't have anything, you feel better than when you're actually making money, right? So then you're just like, So then I was just had this mentality of like, well, that's all I'm going to do then. Right. And that's where my philosophy was incorrect, because I didn't view money as the tool that it is. We can talk a little bit more about that, but I didn't really view money as the tool that it is. And then I stayed with Luke in this Airbnb for like a month in Mexico, and we were just going to town masterminding and just figuring out like what are the next steps, like how I'm going to do this. And then eventually I built an agency. And long story short, a year and a half after I decided that I wasn't going to be a freelancer, had over 100 employees, already broke 7 figures, and was on the back end where we were able to help tons of nonprofits with their marketing and marketing education. And then now I'm actually in the process of raising money to actually build the nonprofit that I want to build the correct way.
Hey guys, if you enjoyed this short clip, check out the full interview here. And if you want to see more clips from this episode, check it out right here.